Okay, so first of all, I just want to say thank you so much. This is such an easy church to come and speak to. I mean, everyone was so excited this morning, just excited and just encouraging. And I just thought, wow, what a great place. People here really care about the people here, and they're excited to hear about other people in other nations. It's just such a great place to be, such an easy place to speak to and speak at. So thank you guys for that this morning. And so as many of you know, at the end of January, early February, I got a chance to go to Cambodia with a group of women here from Redding. And so there were 8 of us ladies that got to go. And it was such a fun time. I've never traveled on a missions trip with just women. And we had some very funny experiences I've never had before. But I mean, just, all the things that sharing essential oils on the airplane and talking about, before the trip getting ready, we all had our head rests and our eye patches things and compression stockings for the airplane, and it was very, very, a very feminine trip, I should say that. But so we got to go with a group. Well, so there's many of you maybe have heard of Hard Places Community in Cambodia, and it was established by a pastor at the Stirring. And so there are quite a few people from Redding that go. So even if you haven't heard of that organization before, it's a great organization. I'm sure you'll hear about it because it's very small, but it's really growing. And so quite a few people from Redding go there on a regular basis. So it's called Hard Places Community in Cambodia. So, but let me go ahead and get through this. Now, as I was thinking about what to share about the trip, the passage that God really gave me when we were in Cambodia, so we were actually in the country for 9 days. So it was a short trip, but while we were there with the people, and I'll be showing you pictures and telling you some of the stories of the people, but the Lord really gave me this word for the nation, and it just kept coming up for even the church today just to share. And so it's from Isaiah, and it just says, "But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me. The Lord has forgotten me." And then the Lord responds, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I've inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are ever before me." And I just think, it's like, what better picture to use than a mother? I mean, as Pastor Sean was saying, most people, I mean, that's when you think of devotion, you think of not being forgotten, you think of being held and nurtured, you think of your mother or just other women in your life. That's just something that God's put in women. Oh, I see a white hanky back there. Thank you. I told Sean I better hear some or see some white hankies and get some encouragement. There we go. Help me out. Help a sister out. So most people, I would say, probably the stories I hear, have had a mother like that who just, a story of a mother coming alongside you and being your number one fan and being the one who never forgets you. And I mean, not everybody's had that experience. Some of us have had mothers who, for one reason or another, have not been able to be that picture of perfect, pure devotion. And so I just think that's so amazing that God put in there, hey, if you can imagine, if you've had this amazing mother, then picture I'm like that. But even if you haven't had that, maybe you've been rejected or you've been like most of the people in Cambodia. I mean, it's a very orphaned country. He's saying, even if you haven't had that, I'm going to be that for you. And that's even just that's kind of been a big theme in my life personally. It's just been when you've been forsaken or rejected by one of your parents, your earthly parents, that God never does that. And so that's kind of the theme of today. So I feel like God kind of gave this moment in time for me to be able to just encourage everyone who's here that you are not forgotten, that people in other countries who are, I'm sure right now there's a lot of people feeling forsaken, like what's going on, especially people in Cambodia. They've been through genocide. As you know, over 2 million people were killed in Cambodia in the 70s. They've just had, and in the 80s, the sex trafficking industry just sprung up. They've just been exploited. year after year, and like so many other countries and so many people even in the States, it's easy to kind of go, oh, God's totally forgotten me. There's no one that's looking out for me. And so I'm just, for this moment in time, I felt like the Lord's going, no, hey, just remind the church that nobody here is forgotten, and that we need to also remember the people in other nations, and we need to not forget their stories and not forget their plights and not forget that they are image bearers. Okay, so just a quick, I already touched a little bit on going into Cambodia. It's that little purple spot up there. And, the kingdom of Cambodia used to be bigger, but, as happens with other kingdoms and cultures, wars and things, it's gotten smaller over the time. But, and Angkor Wat, which is basically the biggest temple ruins that we have in the world today. And, up there in the picture, that's really what brings tourism to Cambodia right now. And then down below, as I just touched on, the Khmer Rouge in the 70s, absolutely, and I won't go into the history too much, right now, but we got to we visited the killing fields, I think the second day we were there. And it was one of those days where I was just like, you're feeling jet lagged. I was really sick the first part of the trip, and I was just feeling so weak, like in my physical and soul. And then on the way to the killing fields, on the tuk-tuk ride, I was just having one of those moments where I was like, Lord, the Bible talks about boasting in your weakness and boasting but it sounds great. I mean, it sounds good. And as Americans, we really don't like to boast in our weakness. I mean, I was kind of like, oh, that sounds great, but I wish I was better at this, or I wish I had this, but on the tuk-tuk ride there, I just felt like this amazing ability to connect with the vulnerability in that country, and just even vulnerability in myself. I was just like driving there going, Lord, but it was the first time I really had the grace to go, I truly am thankful for my weakness. I can honestly say I'm thankful for everything in my life that, everything that's been hard, everything that I've had to overcome, because truly, we can really boast in Christ. It provides a slot for the Lord to come in and strengthen us. So that's just what we pray for that country. They've been so stolen from over the years. The killing fields were intense. So you see a monument with just skull after skull after skull. So anyhow, the Kingdom of Cambodia, is a country that desperately, like so many countries in the world, desperately need Jesus to redeem and the heartache. So Hard Places community in Cambodia that we were able to go to, they have a base in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, which is the really busy capital of Cambodia. So we flew into Phnom Penh, and so Hard Places community, it's been about 10 years that this organization's been established. There are so many NGOs in Cambodia. It's just one of those countries that thankfully is on the radar, for a lot of different organizations. A lot of people are really coming alongside the Cambodians, because I had some little facts about Cambodia was that 50% of the population are the age 15 and under. So, you really, when you're walking in Cambodia, you don't see that many elderly people. It's really interesting. So, when the Khmer Rouge killed over about 2 million people, they went after anyone educated. They wanted to they basically were elevating the farmers, and they wanted to kill off anyone educated. So you just have a country and a culture that's very much like their children. They're very young. They haven't had a lot of covering. And so a recent UNICEF survey concluded that 35% of Cambodians' 15,000 prostitutes are children under the age of 16. So that's why, as the last few years when child trafficking and stuff has really come onto the radar, Cambodia is definitely one of those ones that stands out because they're so exploited. So Hard Places community was really established a big part of that to meet that need, for just people that are being taken advantage of right now in the world. And so like I said, about 10 years ago, established a group from Reading, or someone from Reading and someone from the Middle East, from the Middle Eastern, one of the Mideastern states, went over there and started going, this country is so in need of mothers and fathers, but the men actually that are being exploited, they're not talked about that much. We hear about the children, but there's a group of men that are really, they're lost, they're finding a space in this whole sex trafficking industry because they're trying to make money for their families. And so that's how it originally started. And so now you have, I'm realizing I probably need glasses sometime soon. I'm having a hard time seeing back there. But I'll turn around here. So what you have now is it started out, them making contact with these men, going into male brothels and saying, hey, I'm pretty sure you want out of this lifestyle. What do you need most? And the men would say, we need to learn English. And so it just started out with a group of men that were just, learning English, and they were being, discipled. And now it's sprung up to, now there's a worship school, and I'll talk more about these branches later, but there's a worship school now. There's a restaurant that's for both the worship school and the restaurants for people, the men who come into this program, and that after a while they're ready. They've been discipled. They're ready. They're surrendered to God. They're really, they're ready to live a different lifestyle. And so they've provided places for them to plug into. So worship school, restaurant. There's a hair salon. There's an art center, and there's a baby house and kids club, because they have gone on now to just going ahead and doing preventative too with kids and babies. So earlier I talked about the men. Now this picture, there's actually only one man in that picture who's actually part of that program. So the one in the white, the rest, there's a couple staff and some other people from our team. Now I just got to stop and tell some stories about these men. They call them the Punlok Tamai men, and they are, I just got to say that when I got to make contact with these men, right now there's about 10 guys through the program currently. And so we were all over the place, and when we were in Phnom Penh for the 5 days that we were in Phnom Penh, we were in Siem Reap, but we were all over visiting these different Hard Place community branches. So we really only got about an hour or two to spend with these men. I have to say that it was, now looking back and processing the trip, when I was putting together what I was going to say, I was just weeping when I was processing. I was like, that hour or two with these men was one of the most significant moments in my life. I just felt like, in the phase of eternity, sometimes you just feel like a moment slows down and you're just like, wow, this was such an honor and privilege. This was at a restaurant after we met with the men. Like I said, only one man went with us to the restaurant. But just try to picture, we're taking a tuk-tuk we get to the hair salon, which is also where these men are discipled by really just a young guy. He's probably in his 30s. But he and his wife and children just said yes. They said, we'll go to Phnom Penh. We'll live in a really polluted city. That's very noisy. My senses were like this the whole time right there. Very noisy. They can't let their kids wander away from them by any means. There's hardly any parks in Phnom Penh, but they said yes, we're going to go and we're going to be dedicated to these men, seeing these men thrive, seeing these men come from darkness into light. And so we got to go to this hair salon, which is kind of a little tiny little room, and walking into these men's lives, I just felt like it was such a vulnerable moment. Here these men know that they've been working in male brothels for, some of them since they were very young. Some of them, currently maybe are still involved off and on in the brothels. Some are further along. Some have already come out of that and have even on staff now. But we just got to, us 8 ladies from another country just got to go and spend this hour with these men and coming around. We sat around in a circle, and they we just got to basically bring a mother's and sister's blessing to these men. And these men were, just most of them, well, I'd say about half of them are still, you could just see the shame. They're just clothed in shame. They're just beaten down by life, So and it wasn't a time where I had time to make small talk with these men. Even, the Khmer language was a lot more difficult than I thought to even talk to people. But we didn't need to have small talk with the men. I didn't get to know most of these men's names or really their stories, but coming around them as sisters and mothers and praying for them. The man in the white standing next to me, he was on one side of me and another man was on the other side of me. And he and I, the whole prayer time, they're like, just release a mother's, sister's blessing on these guys. So we just came around them, and he and I were just clinging hands together. We were just gripping hands and I felt the mother's heart of God over these guys and over this nation of just, wow, you guys have value, and you're so precious. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what's been done to you. You guys are so precious, and you're so valuable. And so he and I, we were just squeezing hands and holding hands and crying together. And then there was another man next to me that I put my hand on his shoulder, and physically he didn't recoil from me, but inside I felt everything in him recoil from me, just my touch, And so I was just kind of praying while we were praying, like asking God, is this okay? Like, should I give him space, or, should I keep my hand on him or what? And I just felt peace about keeping my hand on him, so I just did. But I just felt that, like, he'd been so marred. It's like he couldn't even handle a pure touch from somebody, and just, he couldn't even handle that. And just everything went in him, So what they try to do in this program is they have Friday fun days. And I've been seeing pictures lately, I've been keeping up with it. They just go hang out at a pond together and go fishing. Just normal life, try to get these guys. This is what normal community is. This is what normal life is. We hang out, we love on each other, we laugh, and these, missionaries, they hang out, the kids hang out with these guys. They're hanging out. They're coming around them going like, hey, this is what normal life can be. This is what healthy life can be. It's what healthy touches. It's what healthy camaraderie is. And so it's really, really special. I feel really blessed. I'll never forget it. And so going from the men, like I said, we only had about an hour with them. The Punlok to my kids is kind of a big focus now on what they're doing, because, it's amazing. Just imagine this. There's a group of about 30 staff at HBC. They're all basically in their 20s. Khmer people, that's the technical word for Cambodians, is Khmer. So these 30 people, a lot of them are orphans themselves. I don't really know, a lot of the stories of the people, but I hear a little bit of the staff, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. They were on the streets too, or they were this and that, or they were rejected by their own parents, or like one girl, just a beautiful, beautiful woman. She's so beautiful, but she's got like a crippled hand, and before she came into the program, right now I know her as Sarah. That's what they introduced me to her as. But they were saying before the program, her name in Khmer meant cut one. Like that was what her identity was, as her family was. She was the cut one. She was rejected by her family. And so now she's working with kids, coming alongside of them. They gave her the name Sarah, this organization. The director was like, you're no longer the cut one, you're Sarah, because you are being a mother to these kids. And so I don't know if you can see some of the pictures, but up here, the two top ones were when we were in Phnom Penh. And so the way it works is this staff, about 30, they're touching about the lives of 600 kids a week. They're just, it's kind of like a constant VBS what they're doing. And I'm like, wow, no wonder they're in their 20s, they can do this. But, so what they do is they go, we ride these tuk-tuks, they tote like a picnic blanket, games, Uno, things like that, coloring pages. They'll tote them to all these different locations around the city they choose, they're strategic about, I mean, they just pray and the Lord just downloads where they should go, but they choose the same spots, you know, that sometimes they'll add a new one, but they go to the most concentrated trafficking areas in the city. So, and some of this, which I didn't know this before, but there's actually a history of, there's a pretty large Muslim community in Cambodia as well. So I was like, some of these places, I'm like, oh my goodness, these kids are being trafficked. They're part Muslim, they're Buddhist, they have a Hindu background. I'm like, these, you know, this is just interesting what they're facing. So, you know, kids would show up, like we go to these spot, usually super hot, super muggy. We'd be out in this just, you know, street. Some kids would show up with no clothes on. You know, it's just, you don't know who's going to show up. But most of the kids, you know, especially in these areas, they don't go to school, so they look forward to these kids clubs showing up. They just come running, you know, and what they would do is we would play with them, you know, jump rope and things like that for maybe 30 minutes and just build, you know, relationships with them. And the staff really knows them because, like I said, they're going back to these places every day. Basically, they're going to the same spots. They're reaching out to the kids. So they play with them, and then they gather everybody on the blanket, and they give a story, depending on how long they've been at each of these locations. You know, some of them, this is a little bit more further along, the Bible, but some of them, they just start with a basic design for family. And so even through that, because kind of one of the things that they're doing, one of the reasons why they're doing these kids clubs is the staff's been trained to know what to look for in kids who've been being abused or they're being groomed by perpetrators. So, for example, you may see a kid who's dressed in rags, but they have a really nice watch on. So stuff like that they kind of go, you know, then they just start building relationships, like, where did you get the watch? You know, and who do you live with, and where are you at, you know, with things. Or so they build trust with these kids. You know, like I said, they're going back day in, day out. They're getting to know their stories. So then what they begin to do is they follow the thread to people that are grooming them, taking advantage of them. And so it's a very tedious process. I mean, the HBC is kind of more of the hand, you know, the feet on the ground. I mean, they are the ones who are just getting to know the kids. And once they do, then maybe sometimes they'll take a kid and put them in a safe house with another organization, or they'll do different things. But they're starting to just slowly follow threads with people. And it's almost like, you know, that story you've heard before about the kid with the starfish, and he's throwing starfish back into the water, and somebody was like, why are you doing that? You know, look, there's like millions of them. And he's just like, well, you know, you're not going to make a difference. He's like, well, I made a difference for that one. I made a difference for that one. That's kind of the mentality that they have to have here. You know, it's like if they could just make the difference for one kid, or they could follow the thread to one particular. Usually it's foreigners that are taking advantage of these kids, but not always. But there are, you know, they'll find out, okay, this particular hotel, there's somebody staying in there who's grooming these kids, or who's already taking advantage of these kids, or this kid's, you know, in a really dangerous position right now. So that's the kind of stuff that they, you know, look for. And but so after they give the story, they, you know, they pray together, and then the kids will line up, and they'll get enriched soy milk, you know, and then they'll go on, you know, with their day, and then they'll go to the next spot. So really intense, you know, but every time I just have that attitude, and you just have to have that, you know, every single kid. And before I went, people who have done this before warned me. They're like, you're not going to be, you're just there for a moment in time. Just make eye contact with these kids. Just pour everything that the Holy Spirit gives you into these kids for this moment. And I'm just so thankful for these superhero. I mean, I look at the staff members, I'm like, they're superheroes. I mean, they're going back into these places day after day, and they're just, you know, these dark places. The one on the bottom, so the two, you know, the top is when we were in Phnom Penh, we're meeting with kids on the street corners. When we did go up to Siem Reap to do kind of the same thing, to see the HPC work up in Siem Reap, which is more of a rural area up where Angkor Wat is. A lot of tourists go up there, but it's more rural. It's a quaint little town, but it's definitely also a trafficking hub. But so we would work with kids in the dirt there. So it's like either, you know, city streets or the dirt. in villages and things like that. So that was the kids. Now the worship school. Oh, let me go back to one more story about the kids. Okay, so we were there during the Chinese New Year, which, I mean, it's already so spiritually, intense there that it just like amped everything up. So thank you so much. So many people said they prayed for us, and we felt so covered. I just felt so covered when we were there. Because, I mean, it was very intense. Just hearing, even the one time we were so busy, but one time I had in my hotel, I was like, I just need to go and spend some quiet time with the Lord. Went back to the hotel room. As soon as I got there, they had a parade right outside it was almost like it was staged perfectly. I'm like, okay, quiet time, just worship. And this parade parked right outside of the hotel, just banging on these drums for like hours. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really intense. But anyhow, so also the Buddhist monks were out even more. And so, when times we're on the city street, we're about ready to have the kids. We're right outside in front of the royal palace. So it's just, there's a lot of activity out there. There's a lot of commotion. But we're about ready to set the kids down, and they're all ready to hear the Bible and all ready, to receive whatever God has for them. Right then, all the kids just jump up and run away. And I was like, what's going on? So we're in this like pavilion. So they run, about, I'm not good with measurements, probably 10 yards, or I don't know, 10 yards away. And I look over and I see this Buddhist monk, dressed in his orange with his entourage behind him, and they're handing out food to the kids. And so I was like, okay, maybe they'll hand out food and then the kids will come back. But then what happened is this Buddhist monk with his entourage, he just kind of walks right, it was like something out of a movie or something. He walks right through this pavilion right in front of us, and his robe is like flowing, and he just glides past us. When I see he's like just handing out money to the kids too, just beside him. They're just like frolicking all around him. They're just following him wherever he goes, and he's handing out money. And he walks right by me, and we make this eye contact, like really intense eye contact. And it was, I was like, I had like a power encounter with the enemy. I was like, whoa. He just had this smirk on his face. Like, it was like perfect timing. He knew exactly what was going on, so he's just the kids are just following him, and he just walks right past, and he just takes them away. The kids are just drawn away by this Buddhist monk. So it was really interesting. But then the next day, we get a chance to go to the worship school. So the worship school which is something, let me stop there. I don't always see this in every nation. Been to a few nations, not a ton, but not every nation, the churches and the NGOs really cooperate and come together. But I really felt Cambodia, there was just so much synergy between the groups. So like the worship school for HPC met at the top of a church, just some other church that's not even connected to HPC. But this church was located so cool. It was right next to the royal palace. You could see the royal palace in one direction. You could see it was just right in intense, right in the red light district, right in the middle of all this stuff. So the HBC had, right at the top, there's this praise and worship school. So they take the Khmer men, or anybody who's coming out, they're ready. They have a call in their life for worship, and they've come out of darkness. They're ready to just lead people into worshiping God. So we met up there, and we just had this really intense time of prayer, praise, and worship, and it was just amazing. So while we're worshiping, I'm just closing my eyes, and I'm turned out toward a neighborhood down there with a lot of kids, and I felt like this in prayer, to saw like the Lord, this kind of picture of the Lord Jesus walking through those streets. And the kids are following him, and they're running after him, and then it was cool because even in the vision or the thought, it's like then he like even turned into kind of this ball of light and was just ping, 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 knocking down all these idols. It's like you go into countries like this, there's just idols everywhere, and I just see this idol, and I just felt like this sense of like the Lord's like, you know what, I have the last say on this. The Buddhist monk, he took the kids away for a little bit, but I'm in charge here, and I'm going to have my people are going to follow me. One day every knee will bow before me, and I'm doing work in Cambodia even now. And it was just a really, you know, it's like you go into these dark places, you just have to have that, remember, it's like, no, God's superior. God's superior to all these little idols around. And so then here's another picture of a baby house. We got to, so, you know, sometimes in developing countries, things move quickly. The day we got into the country, they said we secured a place for a baby house. And we weren't sure if that was going to happen or not, but a bunch of stuff was donated from Reading. We had tons of baby things. They're like, just bring baby stuff. We'll see if we get to open this house, because the government actually came to HBC a while ago and said, we've got more babies than we can handle. You're already doing good work with what you're doing. What about opening a baby house? So they said, by faith, sure, we'll do it. So they found a 3-story baby house before we got there. And so we got to clean it from top to bottom. We went to stores, just got to stock it. We just bought everything you can buy to furnish a place. And so these babies, the one on the left they named him baby Jordan. So this baby was being bounced back and forth between missionaries when we were there. So these missionaries, I'm like, oh my goodness, they've got a newborn baby they're taking care of. They've got their own kids. They've got usually adopted kids. I mean, they're running this organization. They're going all around in these tuk-tuks. It's, you know, they've got a lot to deal with. So this baby Jordan, cutie, I mean, just so cute. He's going to be most likely one of the babies in the baby house. And last I heard, they're just waiting on staff. They've got this house. They've got babies. They just need people to come and love on these babies. So Scotty, the one up there, I've never seen anything like that before. Personally, he's had a cleft, you know, face. And so the director of HPC, I think, is going to be adopting him. I think she's already adopted. She's a single woman who's running an organization, but she's already adopted four Khmer kids, I think, and she's, I think, adopting him. But there will be more kids like him that go in the baby house, because there's a lot of the cleft palate, you know, is kind of a problem there. But just such a sweetie. We just got to, I was, you know, sick the first part of the trip, so I couldn't really hold him, because she was like, if he gets sick, it's bad. I mean, because already the director's having to she would have to feed him with a little dropper and stuff like that. But just a cutie. So it's cool that, you know, these babies are going to be raised not with like you guys are orphans, you are, you know, lower than, it's like they are going to be raised with, no, you guys are sons and daughters, you know, of God. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of Andy Crouch. He's got such good stuff. He was the editor and producer of Christianity Today for about 10 years, but he's got a lot of good books on justice. And just really, he boils justice down to, it all goes back to that we are image bearers. Because before, I've been here, you know, all of us have been hearing these buzzwords, buzz phrases like social justice. And for the longest time, I just couldn't get my head around justice. I'm like, I think justice is the opposite of mercy, right? And I'm like, and I'd rather just go for mercy. So why are we talking about justice all the time? Or I just couldn't see, or I thought, well, justice means that, you know, these bad guys are going to, you know, get in trouble. But I'm like, but they're victims too, really. They're victims of darkness as well. So he had some really good light. Before I went on the trip, I heard a podcast from him. I'm like, oh, that really hit some stuff home. And what he was saying is that Christians really have 3 callings. Let's make this right. We are, one, to bear the image of God. And we're all, whether you're a Christian or not, really as a human, we are all image bearers. And so to bear the image is to exercise dominion. This is what God created us for, caring for and cultivating the good world and making it good through our creative attention. And then 2, as Christians, we are called to restore the image of God. Like, we need to actively seek out places where the image has been lost, to place ourselves at particular risk on behalf of the victims of idolatry and injustice. And that's where it's like we need to be spurred on to, like, that's what we're, you know, it's not just about enjoying being an image bearer, but to, like, actively seek out anywhere it's been lost. And if, you know, in cases of abuse, both the perpetrator and the victim, they're both lost their dignity, you know, as image bearers. And then 3, he says, you know, make the most of today while it's called today. We only know that we have this moment. So do what you can in each moment, you know, to remember that we need to help restore that and not forget others. And so another quick little part of Century 9, I thought about putting this at the end of that because this restaurant they've established is very actively creating. I mean, they're amazing. I put a little burger thing on there, so good. I mean, this restaurant started by HBC, top quality. I mean, the food was so good. Like just creative stuff. I mean, Loklok burger right here, like gluten-free. In Cambodia, you can find it. And then this group up here, the people in the foreground or whatever, they are the directors, the regional directors for the Christian Missionary Alliance. And so this restaurant that HPC started to employ the people out of the trafficking industry, it's become like a meeting place it's just become a watering ground for people. So we happened one night, we're there, the lady in the back is Dawn's aunt. She was there at the time. She happened to introduce me to the regional directors of the CMA, and I thought, this is so cool. Like we're just, everyone's there, there's the restaurant doing their part, their little piece to the puzzle. So again, I wanted to end on this of this passage, and I just felt like today, there may be some people here who, like how Zion said, or maybe some people in Cambodia, they're just kind of saying, I feel forgotten, and I really feel like the Lord's forgotten me and in my stage of life, and or you're just really resonating with those who are in a place where they're being forgotten. So I'm going to have a little prayer time for that. But I just got to say one last thing about this. It was interesting because, like I said, I brought that, felt like I was supposed to bring that word to the people about you are not forgotten. We will not forget you. Well, a couple days after I got back, mysteriously, I mean, I don't think it's super mysterious, I have a 2-year-old, but somehow my phone got some passcode put on it, and then we couldn't get it off. And then the Snowmageddon happened, and we had no internet in our house for 2 weeks. And we couldn't. So all my phone was locked up. I couldn't look at the pictures again, that I took and kind of reacquaint myself. Finally, my husband was able to unlock it, but he had to erase everything. So all my pictures were erased, and it was just so weird. I was like, here, specifically gave these people my promise, I will not forget you. But everything was almost wiped out of my memory. And then I was just distracted, with all this. Things started piling up of all the responsibilities here, and I didn't have internet, and my phone access didn't work. My phone didn't have access out at Millville, so I just got distracted for a little bit. So it wasn't almost until just recently, the Lord brought back, there are people out there, you told them you're not going to forget them. And I'm not forgotten, through the things I've been through, and you guys aren't forgotten. And so I asked Pastor Sean, if there's any possible way that we could have some people available for prayer this morning. And some of the things that I was thinking about is, again, for those of you who've, you just feel like you're kind of, and I've been there before in my life, you just feel like you're back in the wilderness, you're tending sheep, you're just kind of, you're hidden and you're just forgotten, or you're just in a kind of I don't know what I'm doing in life right now, but I'm just keeping my nose to the ground, just trying to do what God has me to do. Or maybe you're in a place where you're just man, I just feels like things are coming against me, and it feels like things are a lot harder than they should be. And then also I just felt like if anybody needs prayer this morning for, maybe you're carrying somebody in your heart, that you're one of those ones who's someone's not forgotten. They're always on your radar. Maybe it's a son or a daughter or a mother or father or neighbor. There's somebody you're really carrying that you're I can't forget them, but even if I tried, but I feel heavy for them, and I want to have some support. And then also I wanted anybody who just needs prayer, they're just, open to say, hey, I've been rejected by a parent. Maybe I have some mother-father issues or wounds. And that, obviously happens, in life. And I know that I personally have had to get a lot of healing from that. So, so I just wanted to throw those out there for you guys.